Thanks for joining us for a special 5 on 5 with Congressman Bentz. I'm Joe Sullivan. Congressman, thanks for joining us from Washington, D.C.
Happy to be with you, Joe.
All of the questions today come from our viewers. These questions were all sent to us on the KOBI Facebook page. And question number one from a viewer in Medford. Do you believe in the separation and balance of power as per the Constitution?
Oh, absolutely.
Could you expound on that a little bit?
Right. Well, so under Article 1, Congress has certain powers, and the president has certain powers in another article, and the courts have certain powers under a third, and thus the separation of powers is a long-established means of making sure no one branch has more power than it should. That's why they call it the balance of power. It's a great idea, and it's one that is constantly being jousted about by the courts because each branch at one time or another has attempted to expand that power, and the courts are there to make sure they don't overstep the scope of what the Constitution grants them.
Second question from a viewer in Grants Pass. When will you hold a live town hall with your constituents?
You're right. So I think I've now done 4 live town halls in Medford. I've done about the same number in other counties. I have 20 counties. I try to do live town halls in each of those counties each year. Last year, I believe my town hall in Medford was in August. That's probably what we'll shoot for. I will tell you that the town halls, the 4 live town halls I've already held this year in Baker County, Umatilla County, in Union County, and then up in Morrow County, they were quite different in the sense that I was convinced that people were using those town halls as platforms to protest. And my town halls are designed to try to educate each side of the discussion, not scream, shout, yell, and otherwise be disruptive. So town halls are supposed to be educational, not disruptional.
Another question from a viewer in Medford. What is he doing to protect the interest of children and families in the district that are feeling the devastating effects of this administration's cuts?
Well, they haven't. They'd have to tell us how they've been devastated. He might have been a little more focused in his question. I will tell you that we were able to make sure that the funding flowed through to Head Start in the 27 Head Start facilities in Southern Oregon when the consolidation of offices that handle that flow of money occurred. It took our office literally 3 hours to make sure that reach out after we received concerns from Medford and other places that the money might not be forthcoming. It took our office 3 hours to make sure it was forthcoming. So I will just use that as one example of how we step in to help the kids and folks in my district.
Another question from a viewer. Do you support Oregon keeping mail-in voting?
I've supported mail-in voting for a long time. I do think it has a lot of areas that need to be refined to make sure people aren't cheating and, more to the point, aren't going out and gathering up ballots with wheelbarrows, which I think has been happening. This vote ballot harvesting, I tried to make it illegal 8 or 10 years ago when I brought a bill in the Oregon legislature to make illegal ballot harvesting. And to me, there are problems with mail-in voting that need to be absolutely addressed. And that's why I think a lot of people are going, hey, let's go back to regular, everyday, show up and vote voting as opposed to opening our system to the kind of voting irregularities that we've seen in the past.
All right, we'll take a quick break and be right back with part 2 of our 5 on 5 with Congressman Bentz. Welcome back to part 2 of our special 5 on 5 with Congressman Bentz. We continue with questions all from our viewers. Why are you allowing the executive branch of government to withhold funds previously approved by Congress?
Okay, again, it would help if people would provide specifics, but the ability of the executive branch to manage the expenditures of money has never been questioned. The real issue is whether or not the administration decides not to spend money that Congress has specifically said should be spent. So there's the kind of the crunch area. I think that where monies have not been spent that people think should have been spent, those matters are being taken to court, and the court will rule on those, and we'll know if there was an overstep of the executive branch's powers, and that's the proper way to sort it out.
A question from a viewer in Klamath Falls. What is he doing to take care of our veterans who are facing cuts in services with staff reductions?
Yeah, well, the very first thing people need to understand is what type of reductions have been put in place. And let's talk about that. There are about 500,000 people that work for the VA, 500,000 taking care of about 18 million veterans, 18.1 to be more precise. The amount of cuts thus far amount to 0.5% of that 500,000 people, about 2,500 people. So to say that there's been a gutting of the agency or these other crazy terms, these exaggerations people are using, is a classic way of trying to scare people, and it's reprehensible. They should stop.
A viewer question from Medford. What actions will you be taking to protect SNAP benefits from being lost, Head Start shutdowns, and OHP being under attack?
Well, there's a lot going on in that question. Let's just talk about SNAP for a moment. The SNAP benefits are extraordinarily important to an awful lot of people. And the challenge is, how do we make sure people aren't abusing those programs, stealing from those programs, defrauding those programs, and otherwise using those programs if they have no right to do so? And no one should dispute our Congress or the president stepping in and making sure that those programs are not abused. Nobody. And so what we're doing right now is trying to make sure that indeed is the case, and while at the same time maintaining this essential program.
Congressman, here's another viewer question for you. How can he justify thousands of federal workers being laid off and then shutting down funding that supports food banks across the country?
Well, once again, they would have to get the specifics, but let's talk about the, quote, thousands, end quote. There are about 2.5 million people working for the U.S. government, not including the military, not including the post office. And if you got 2.5 million people and you're trying to, in some fashion, make sure that everybody is doing their job, you first try to look at what's going on in these agencies. Then you try to figure out how to reduce the size of those agencies if you think that they're not doing as much as they should be. We could go into a lot of detail on that, but that's up to the executive branch. What I have done is when there have been reductions in force, and there have been some extremely modest in number, I say, hey, call my office. And if you have some reduction in force that's going to affect health and safety, let me know. We'll reach out to the executive branch.
Here's our final question from a viewer. Why are you sitting silently while Congress cedes all its power and authority?
Well, we're not. And we're not sitting silently, and we're not ceding all of our power. What we are doing is watching carefully as we see what the president's trying to do, which is folks have wanted him to do for years, and no other presidents haven't had the courage or the ability to do it, and that is shrink our workforce when we know that there are many people that aren't doing what needs to be done. So we haven't been ceding our authority at all, but I am a Republican. I support the administration, and I'm happy they're doing their best to try to whittle down the size of a bloated bureaucracy.
Congressman, you've answered a lot of questions here from the viewer. Just, I would like to get your input on what your thoughts are on these viewer questions today.
Well, I'm happy for these questions. I wish that I would have had the opportunity in the 4 town halls I did hold to address them in this rational approach that you're using, Joe, which is to state the question. I get to answer it without the screaming and yelling and insults that were being hurled by the crowds that I met in my live town halls. We'll be doing telephone town halls starting in about 2 weeks, so people have a chance to weigh in.
Congressman, thanks for taking time from Washington, D.C. We appreciate it.
I appreciate it, Joe. Thank you so much.
All right, stay with us. We'll be right back with more local news.